Thank you very much for introducing. Thank you all for being here. I hope you can hear me. I can see 5 of you. To see the others, I have to switch. So hopefully you are really there. And I'm very happy to make this lecture in this very strange situation. It's also a challenge for me. I would have loved to travel to Barcelona, but as Oliver said, I couldn't. It was too complicated at the moment. So we decided to do the classes and the lecture online. Some of you I know already from the classes, but there are also some new faces, and I'm looking forward to what's going on now. If you have any questions or if you want to say something, please give a sign to Susanna. Susanna, can you see all of them?
Not all of them.
Okay. So then just switch on your microphone and talk if there's something you want to ask.
Okay.
Okay, I share the screen now. Okay. Sorry, it's a little bit complicated. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. I call the lecture today Uncreative Composing. I will tell you why immediately. I will talk in 8 sections, and in between the sections, I will play back parts of 2 pieces. It's always strange in lectures if you play back entire pieces because they are too long. So I decided to cut 2 pieces in several slices. And when the lecture is finished, you will have seen 2 entire pieces in pieces. I will start with an introduction, which is about a book I will start with. Then I will try to classify this book to my work and speak about the reference in my work to that book and the other way around. And in the end, the last 2 parts, I will speak about the 2 pieces you will have seen then. The book I want to start with is called Uncreative Writing. And so you see where the title comes from, Uncreative Composing, Uncreative Writing. It's a book by Kenneth Goldsmith. And Kenneth Goldsmith is the guy behind UbuNet. Maybe you know UbuNet, maybe you don't. If you don't know, you should really explore it. It's a great website with a huge archive of art, music, interviews, videos, film about contemporary music, art. It's so great. It's really a super collection. You can stay there for weeks, I guess. I found this book actually some years ago, but in the Corona time I started reading because I couldn't work as all of you. I had to stay at home, and I read that book and it was really a revelation for me. It's such a great book. I can recommend it very strongly to read. The book is about the question of creativity. It's about the question if creativity has to mean that a genius artist creates abstract artworks out of herself or himself without any influence from the outer world, or if creativity can also be seen as a process of filtering input from the outer world, from the digital world, make artworks to give it back to the society. In the book, you find very reasonable arguments for theses like stealing and copying from other artists is normal and it's legal. Being open towards the audience is good and not forbidden. Conceptual works are equivalent to structural works, so they are not worse than structural works. They are also good. Using familiar or found material is normal and good, and art can also be only a transformation process. So it's not about the object, but it's about the process. And I will speak about all that in the lecture. So this is it's the thing I will speak about. Regarding conceptual art, I draw a distinction between more idea or process related artworks. Maybe you know the theater works of Rimini Protocol. That would be a good example, where the process and the idea is very important. Sometimes the idea of conceptual art is on just one piece of paper written, maybe one phrase. And the realization is not that important, and the sound in the concert is not that important, but the idea is important. But there's also more performance-related concept compositions. And these are compositions where the outcome counts as well, or is as important as the idea. So there are basically these two ways to make conceptual art. I myself respect very much the conceptualists, like Sol Levitt, for example. They concentrate totally on the idea and they don't care too much about the outcome. In reality, of course, it's a little bit different, but when they speak, they speak like that. But I personally work more for the performance, for the form of a composition, but anyway, I would say my work is conceptual. I like to speak about a guided experience for the audience and for the performers, because performers are very important for me in the working process. Now you will hear the first piece of music, and I tell you now, I will just start it the next time without saying anything, so don't be surprised if I just start music in between that is not related to what I say. You have to be a little bit generous with this video because it's a video from a dress rehearsal. It's not that good. The sound is not so good, but you can watch it exclusively because I didn't publish it yet. So I just go on. Goldsmith says in his book, there are basically two ways of making art. I already mentioned it. There's abstract art that is supposed to be made independently from any sources. And there's concrete or conceptual art, filtering and transforming obvious sources from music that exists already or other art that exists already. These two ways of making art also represent the two main aesthetic trends of the last century. There is, as you know, modern art and postmodern art. Modern art is more about the absolute masterpiece. It's very much related to the philosophy of humanism. Postmodern art is more about concrete artwork, and it's related to the theory of pluralism of philosophers like Lyotard and Derrida. And of course, there is a wide range in between these two poles. When I think about the difference between modern art and postmodern art, I always think about a quotation or citation of Slavoj Žižek I read in his book with the long title, Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Lacan, but Were Afraid to Ask Hitchcock. It's a great book, but it's about cinema, it's about films. But it has an introduction, and in this introduction there are some pages about the difference between postmodern and modern art. And it's really the best and clearest and shortest definition I ever read. And I always keep it in my mind just to keep it for me when I get into a situation where I have to know it or explain it. So modern art means to make unfamiliar artworks familiar, and postmodern art means to make familiar artworks unfamiliar. That means the artwork in modern art is cryptic. When you see something or listen to something in the modern art, you don't understand it. Then in the process of reception as a listener or a viewer, you have to learn about this artwork. You have to get to know it. You have to do research. You have to read scores. You have to listen to a piece 10 times. And then you get to know the piece and it becomes familiar to you. Whereas in the postmodern way of reception, it's the other way around. The postmodern artist or composer takes known things, well-known things, and transforms them in an artwork. And related to the audience, in modern art, all the work is done by the audience. And in postmodern art, all the work is done by the artist. So the artist has to guide a listener or a viewer through the reception process with the piece. And the modern artist just presents his strange object. In my opinion, this idea of a genius who produces masterpieces out of the void or from God, who gets his melodies taking a shower or walking in the park, has always been wishful thinking. It was a lie already in the 19th century. But still, many people in the society believe that, strangely. Actually, maybe a reason for this is that it's very comfortable for the artists because they like to be admired by the people who are sitting in the concerts or going to the museum. And it's also a bit comfortable for the audience because they like admiring their heroes and stars. So maybe this is a reason for this kind of a lie about the genius is going on until today. I also think that a composer is, as anybody else, a social person. Maybe he or she has special skills. a good feeling for what's currently to do, for any trends or philosophies or whatever. We all learn from our surroundings. We are all cultural people. We all had a socialization in our family, in our peer groups, at school, and so on. And therefore, composition and art, from my view, is not intellectual property. If you don't know the word, in German, it's geistiges Eigentum. I think the German word is even has traveled around the world, but in English you call it intellectual property, a very, very important topic for all artists, especially for musicians, related to the GEMA, for example, in Germany and other associations in other countries. I think music compositions can be copied and used by others, even without asking. I also think there's nothing mysterious about the process of making art or about the artwork itself. And to keep the idea of the artwork mysterious is also a way to keep this idea of the genius artist. So I'm working against this idea in my the people I meet in concerts and at the university here. But that does not mean that art can be mysterious, because in the performance, an artwork, of course, can produce a mysterious situation during during a concert, for example. A crucial aspect in this context is the attitude of the artists or composers towards the audience. A modern composer tends to say that he or she does not care about the audience. Maybe you also heard that a lot of times. Some even say they ignore the audience. But why do they do so? Here are the common excuses I know. The first one, of course, they want to maintain this myth of being a genius. That's clear. Secondly, many say that thinking about the audience means pleasing the audience, and this means then being commercial or making entertainment. Then working with familiar or well-known musical elements is often called old-fashioned or conservative or popular. And some composers or artists think you can only be successful with functional contemporary music compositions. I use this CM for contemporary music, by the way, if you read. So they think they have to just deliver because the presenters want this kind of music and they have to give it to them, or the audience wants it and they have to give it to the audience. And many say in the end, anyway, we do not know who is sitting in a concert. People are so different. How can I deal with an audience with thousands of different people? But here are some reasons to go ahead anyway. So I just relate to the 5 points I mentioned. Composers who refer to existing music, obviously refer to existing music, can also be brilliant, and they can also be a genius. Secondly, caring about the audience does not mean to please the audience. There are ways to deal with the audience without pleasing the audience, of course. Then working with familiar musical elements is progressive. Structural composing, like contemporary music composing, is the academic style. And therefore, this is conservative and old-fashioned and not working with familiar musical elements. In addition, all the efforts to provoke the audience with very strange music in the 60s and the 70s failed very early because they didn't reach the audience they wanted to reach. They had the imagination of changing people with their compositions, but in the concerts, there were only the colleagues and they were already changed. So there was no need of provocation or no need of forced pedagogical stuff. And the last point, we know very well who is sitting in a concert, because who is going to a contemporary music concert, we know it. So if we give them the expected structural contemporary music composition, this means pleasing the audience, and this is entertainment then. And this is what happens in contemporary music concerts very often, not always, but very often. And it's the opposite of the new experience the composers speak about.
One, two, one, two, three, four. One, two, one, two, three, four.
Have you ever seen a desert? There are all kinds of deserts. Have you ever seen a desert? There are all kinds of deserts. Have you ever seen a desert? There are all kinds of deserts.
One, two, one, two, three, four.
Have you ever seen a desert? There are all kinds of deserts. Have you ever seen a desert? There are all kinds of deserts. Have you ever seen a desert? There are all kinds of deserts.
Okay. I'm going on. So I tried to make a transfer of the ideas of Goldsmith to the field of composition. I saw that many of his ideas were very close to my aesthetics, and I'm going a bit into the detail with that, and I refer more to my work. Already in the 80s, during my studies in Stuttgart, I thought a lot about this whole field, and I decided when I started my second career as a composer, because I stopped composing at the age of 18 because I was very bored by the contemporary music scene in Darmstadt those days. Darmstadt now is much, much better than it was in the 80s. You can all be happy to, if you can be there. And I restarted composing at around 26, 27, with this kind of manifesto, maybe. I decided to only work with concrete musical elements. And I decided to work closely together with performers and to work for the audience, with the audience in mind and with the performers in mind during the working process. I decided to make musical form traceable in a piece, which doesn't mean it has to be a romantic symphony. There are other ways, modern ways to do so. I decided to work with expectations of the audience instead of ignoring the audience. I decided to make the process or the idea, the concept of a composition visible on stage with the help of video. And I decided to question the stage situation in a classical concert. So that's the overview. And the rest of this lecture, I will just step through these points and make clear what I mean. I go on with the first point I mentioned. This is concrete musical elements. Maybe you noticed already that I avoid the word material. Some of you in the classes, the last days I told about already, it's a project. Since 3 years, I try to avoid the word material. And in my classes at the university here in Cologne, the word is forbidden. That's a bit a joke, but it's also serious because the word material is very much related to structural composing, and it's very much an excuse for everything a composer does, and people are stopping reflecting when they hear the word material. They believe everything. So I'm trying to find new expressions, and my expression at the moment is musical element. So I'm using this word that doesn't sound as good as material, but it's an effort. So what is concrete musical elements? It's everything that is familiar to the average culturally well-educated listener. So that's the people normally sitting in classical concerts or in contemporary music concerts. Examples for these elements are citations and quotations. It's a bit the same. There's a little difference. Citation has a concrete source, and quotation is just something you heard, but you don't have to name the source. And there's the allusion. Allusion is a fake citation. So you do something like Berlioz, but it's not a real citation, it just sounds like. This is one group of concrete material, concrete musical elements. There are entire compositions. In the field of art, there's the appropriation art, where artists just take artworks from other artists and say, this is mine. Nobody has done it in the field of contemporary music yet. So if you want, you can do it and become famous with it. In the field of music, there's the remix. It's not so common in our circle, but in pop music, it's very common. And it was very common in Romantic and Baroque music, that you go to the archive and copy the composition of another composer, like Bach copied the compositions of Telemann and Vivaldi. And he made, what did he do? He made out of a violin concert from Vivaldi, he made a cembalo concert, and he said then, this is my concert. That's the first remix of the music history, I would say. In the Romantic era, it was just normal. If a composer liked the composition of a colleague, he got the score and he made variations from it, or a kind of new version, or some even did it with their own works. Like Schubert had his Wanderer song, and he made a piano piece of it, and then the piano piece became a piano concerto by Liszt, for example. This is kind of remixing entire other pieces. Then the third group is elements that trigger any emotion. It's a big problem in contemporary music because it's kind of no-go. The fourth group is all elements that are related to extra musical themes. Everything that reminds of hunting, military stuff, police sirens, nature, like describing water, describing wind, describing a firework. Firework is not nature, sorry. All kinds of jingles and melodies you know from TV or from shops or whatever, like the ping of a microwave, for example. So all this stuff, I remember very well the seminars I had in Stuttgart in the 80s with Mr. Lachenmann. He named this and he said, don't use it, it's forbidden. Because it's too easy then for the composers and for the audience. The audience has to work. That's very Protestantic. Then the last group is well-known musical turns, like, for example, harmonic turns, like what you call, for example, a Trugschluss. If the dominant goes not to the tonica, but it goes to the parallel of the tonic. I don't know the English expressions for that. Something you really know well if you have a musical education, and normally people in the concert, they all play a little piano and or know für Elise. And if you take something from für Elise, of course, they will recognize it. So these well-known musical elements are musical elements many people with the responding education can recognize in the concert. All this, that list was partly avoided in the beginning of the 20th century during the conversion towards abstraction, which took part in the field of arts with paintings, abstract paintings, and Russian painters and so on. And it took also place in music. Composers said, okay, we stop working with melodies and harmony, and they started to avoid things that were typical for romantic music. And after the Second World War, composers for a period of time totally avoided all of that, to free music from its history and to free composition from all social conventions. So no intuition of the composer, no composing from the belly. It all had to be totally free of historical stuff. This was an experiment with several purposes, and many of them were formulated by Theodor W. Adorno. You all know him. He wrote the book Philosophy of New Music, Philosophie der neuen Musik, which was the Bible for the composers in the 60s and beginning 70s. He was a fighter for humanism. He was a fighter for the dialectic of enlightenment, all that German stuff. And he was fighting against capitalism and against the abuse of music. He was totally against pop music and jazz music. Actually, he didn't know much about pop music. He was very much against jazz music and against Stravinsky, because for him, Stravinsky was a very bad composer. Maybe you read the book. This phase or era in the history of contemporary music was very important and pioneering, and maybe it was the birth of contemporary music after the Second World War, the birth of the field we all work in. It was so really important, but this experiment is over since the end of the 70s. And regarding the impact on the audience and the listeners, as I said, it was a total fail already 50 years ago. It didn't work because they didn't reach the people. But the music production in the field of contemporary music remained basically the same. So a piece composed now for people who are not very much into composing and contemporary music sounds very similar to a piece of the 70s. So I think we really have to think about this and maybe make a bigger step. In addition, in the 70s and the beginning 80s, the academic forces, especially in Central Europe, suppressed successfully many other tendencies, like, for example, the conceptualism, which was very, very important in the 50s and 60s. There were so many little flowers coming up, but then there were the serious composers with big shoes, and gone were the flowers of minimalism, neo-romantics, the postmodernism movement in the 60s, like Ligeti, the great pieces of the great postmodern pieces of Ligeti in the beginning of the 60s. It just didn't take it serious. And there was Berio, there was Kagel, who did such great stuff in the 60s, really good stuff. And then he saw he can't be successful, and he changed his whole working style towards contemporary music in the 70s and stopped what he did before, unfortunately. And there was Feldman. Feldman today is a king, a star, everybody knows him. But when I was young in the 70s and in the 80s, nobody took him serious. He was a strange guy from New York doing not really good music. That's was the tenor those days. So today, there's actually no reason to avoid using familiar material in your compositions, except for one very important thing, and that's the fact that art has always to be distinct from entertainment. If art becomes entertainment, it will be dead, because there's no reason for art to exist any longer if it joins with entertainment. Maybe the entertainment will also be dead then, I don't know, and we get something new. Maybe this is the good way, I don't know. But if we want to go on with composing contemporary music pieces, and if we want to keep our music alive, we have to be careful that it doesn't become pure entertainment. That's a dilemma. On one hand, we want maybe to use familiar material to make other kind of music, new art experiences for the audience. And on the other hand, we have to be careful to make clear. That's what I had to do my whole life. I present a piece like Caravan, it's full of pop music. And then if a hardcore contemporary music composer listens to that piece, he will tell me, are you crazy? That's just pop music, it's entertainment, it's not art. So that's a problem. But there's a solution for this dilemma. Of course, you have to think about everything in detail. I just take the example of emotion in music, because it's a big issue in contemporary music. We should not use musical elements that trigger emotion, because it's too close to the field of entertainment. So the solution is, there is a big difference between working with emotions, which mean using them, and working about emotions, which means doing research about emotion in music works. So a composition can either be use emotion triggering stuff as an effect, that's entertainment, like film scoring, or it can use emotion triggering for art purposes. And there are different ways to do so. And that's what I try to do in my work. For doing so, the most important rule is the rule of postmodern transformation. This is very, very, very important for everybody who wants to work with familiar stuff. If you use concrete musical elements, they have at first to be recognized by the audience, because if not, it wouldn't work. But then afterwards, these recognized elements have to transform in a new context. If they don't change in your piece is a failure. If you make a citation of, don't know, Liszt or Schubert or Beethoven, and it just remains a citation of Beethoven, then your piece is a failure. But if people recognize it, oh, it's Beethoven, and then in the next moment, there's other stuff going on, and it melts maybe in a big group of references or whatever you do. That's the job of the composer in a postmodern artwork, to make this possible. But anyway, if you fail, it's still entertaining. And if you don't, you make great artwork. And what's also good, artwork can be judged then. If you're in the concert and you listen to postmodern pieces and you can see, oh, it fails, then it's bad. You can just say, no, this was not a good piece. And if there's a transformation in the piece and there's an atmosphere coming up, then you can say, this piece was good. That's something I really miss in contemporary music concerts, and many people miss, that you can't go out and say, this piece was good and this piece was bad. You can only go out and say, okay, I liked it, I didn't like it. But to be true, many of us just avoid speaking about the quality of the pieces they hear in the concert because we just don't really know how to judge them. Working this way, of course, the audience is much more welcome while listening to a piece or to a composition because they can recognize something, makes them happy. They can easily enter the composition and then follow the form or the concept or whatever's going on. The rest I said already. Go on with the next music, please.
Have you ever seen a desert? There are all kinds of deserts.
Sorry. So next point is stage and actions. So why should one put in question the stage situation in a classical concert? I think a classical concert is like a kind of museum. It's great and nice, but it's part of the past. I think we can and should find new forms of presentation in a changed world, especially now in the Corona situation. This is a very big topic. Then secondly, I'm very much thinking about what's going on stage. So the actions of the musicians when they play music. To point on those actions to make I would say, the audience notion them again, because they are so much used to the ritual of a classic concert. The musicians come on stage, they sit down, they take their instruments, they play. It's just normal, nobody thinks about that. But we can, and a good way to point on it is to double it or to totally exaggerate it. And here again, we see a difference between the modern way of working and the postmodern way. The modern way would be if you put in question something, you avoid it. You just put it out. Like going to another concert hall that looks different. And the postmodern way would be to just make it and exaggerate it totally. Therefore, in pieces like Blackjack or Exit to Enter, I have double or triple stages. So musicians enter, they go up the stairs, they sit down, and then during the piece, they stand up again and go to a second stage and sit down again and play there. So the first time they enter, for the audience, it's a normal thing. The second time they enter, it's a strange thing. And the audience, or some people in the audience, will start thinking about, oh, yeah, that's the way a concert starts. The musicians come in and play. And that's, for me, the starting point to deal with all aspects of music production on stage. And it's a big field. A second possibility to emphasize the actions on stage is to separate movement from sound. That means you hear the sound and you see the movement, but it's not at the same time. And later in the video, it's combined. I'm working on this for a very long time, trying to find different solutions and getting more and more radical. And Caravan is one of the most radical pieces, because musicians have no instruments anymore on stage, totally no instruments. In the other pieces, they were also playing their instruments, but then going to the second stage and doing actions. In Caravan, it's only actions. And the music is pre-produced, it's already finished. So it's just a combination of live movements with pre-produced music. And actually, that's very strange. Finally, stages, especially theater stages, have always been about the question of reality. It's a room where everything is possible, even things that are not possible. Today, for us, maybe it's more cinema, but earlier times it was the theater where things were possible, where reality didn't work, maybe, or where dreams can become true. Today, we know and we accept that there is no sustainable or reliable reality around us in the world. And we are not any longer suffering from that. But this means we need a new definition for what's going on a theater stage, because we don't know it, we don't need it anymore for that purpose. The next point is how to make or why to make form visible on stage. Composing normally happens at home. It's a process that happens at the table or wherever the composer is, and only the end product is presented in a concert. But I, from the beginning on, tried to showcase also the process of putting things together on stage. Therefore, it was one reason for using tape and video in my pieces. So then the audience can follow the musical elements emerging and being put together or composed during the performance. I do this mainly as a sign to support the demystification of the act of making art. I already spoke about that earlier. In the beginning of each piece I ever made, I show each element the piece consists of, and I use in the piece, and I try to reveal the concept and the process for the audience, so that anybody can understand it. A great model for this is the beginning of the Fifth Symphony of Beethoven. He shows his main motif, ta 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 ta, and then he shows the process. And the process in the beginning of the Fifth Symphony, you can listen to it once more, is almost self-identical. It's very, very interesting, and it's very much intellectual, I think. So I would say it's a true anti-masterpiece, the Fifth of Beethoven. And maybe it's the first postmodern composition in the world. So now I'm coming to the end. I'm speaking about the two pieces you just listened to. Only the end is missing of both pieces. The first piece is called Caravan. It's the piece that should have been played in the Mixtur Festival, and I hope very much that it will be played next time. It was commissioned by Emilio Guim, who is the leader of the ensemble of Nomads, and it was premiered in Switzerland, in Zurich in 2018. Of course, the title Caravan comes from the ensemble's name. Nomads live in the desert, and maybe they travel in caravans, so it was just a first thought that came up to me. And I kept this thought because for a long time, I wanted to use a piece by Piero Umiliani, which is a version of the jazz standard Caravan by Duke Ellington. So the main song in the piece is the song Caravan by in a version of Piero Umiliani. For all of you who don't know him, he was a composer working very much with synthesizers in the 60s and 70s, and you can call him a space age composer. He did what we call launch music, which is used very much in Casanova techno. And maybe a funny side story is that he was a composer of many soft porn movies. And he was so successful with this soft porn music that there were many records published with just his music he composed for the films without the films. So if you want to see something funny or listen to something funny, listen to his music. Caravan just showcases the producing of a music clip, but it showcases it in real time on stage. You can see the performers producing all the video sequences. They change the light, they change positions, they change the background, they change their clothes, they do everything. And it's very, very stressful for them, especially because they have to learn it by heart. And it's all written in a score. If you're interested, you can just go on my website and download the score and have a look. Also, all the tech stuff is on my website for all the pieces, by the way. And the audio was pre-produced. It was a track I composed before. And in performance, it's just the production of the video. So at the same time, when they are still working on the video sequences, you can see the resulting video, and you just saw it. Wherever you watch during a performance or when you watch the video, you will always miss something, and that's part of the concept. Because I think, in fact, we are always in our lives being lost by too much happening around us, and at the same time, and we are missing a lot of things, especially if we live in a rural part of the world. But we don't suffer anymore from it. It's just a thing, a fact. Caravan is a piece for musicians totally without instruments. I think that's very radical. It has to be musicians because dancers would be too good. Theater actors would also be too good with acting. It has to be musicians. My first idea was, what do musicians do in a bar when they speak about music? They speak with their hands, they take things on the table and use them to show a rhythm or a melody or an atmosphere, or copy other musicians and do things like that. That was my first idea. So it's very important that it is musicians who perform the piece. Actually, dancers or actors couldn't read or keep the score in mind by heart. Actually, I was really very surprised by the acceptance of the fact that all playing is fake in that piece. I almost think that fake is the new normal. I also did another piece called Key Check. It's for a pianist who plays on a wooden board, and the whole piece is pre-produced, and the pianist is just moving his fingers. And at the first performance, I was really afraid about how would the audience react to that, because he's not playing a single note in the concert, but everybody has been happy about it. So there was no complaints about the fact that, that it's all fake.
What did they
California melodies. California melodies. California melodies. California melodies. California melodies. California melodies. melodies. California 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 melodies. Caravan. California melodies. California melodies. Caravan. California melodies. Caravan. California melodies. Caravan. California melodies. Caravan. California.
So this was Caravan. Now at the end, some words about transit. Actually, in the video of transit, it's, as I said, a rehearsal video. It's just the camera that's working for the computer. You can see the musicians that are sitting at the side, and the singers, when they go out, they have also a position for singing. So if you are in the concert, you can also see what the musicians do, because they are really playing at the side. It's not just pre-produced sound. Transit was a commission from Ensemble Crossing Lines from Barcelona, and it was premiered in Auditori in 2018. And it was a cooperation with the Neue Vokalsolisten in Stuttgart, so it was afterwards also played in Stuttgart. It's my third piece with video feedback. And as it is in all my pieces, the video is captured live during the performance. There's never pre-produced video in my pieces except for one. Here in this feedback pieces, the projection is also recorded. That means you get this picture in picture in picture in picture feedback during the piece. Each part has a different color. It starts with green, it's recorded, and then you see this green passage in the projection, and then the light switches to yellow, if I remember well. This is then the second part of the piece. This is also recorded, but including the green one from the screen. And then the yellow and the green one is projected, and the light switches to blue, and then there's the blue part. And this is going on and going on and going on, and then in the end you have maybe 12 parts at the same time, and you see all the music and all the actions from the past, and you can see how the whole piece is made. And in the repeated projections, because it's always recorded and then played back again, the video gets flatter and flatter, loses color. There are some artifacts normally because of the projectors and the cameras reacting to each other. And the same is happening to the music. The music is getting softer and softer each time it is played again. So the composition has to be a canon, as all the parts are played back at the same time. All the harmonies have to fit to each other if it's necessary. And in this piece, it is necessary because it's basically pop music. So it's real normal pop music chords, and I have to pay attention that it fits together. In the piece, there are 4 points where I make a reset. That means one part is played back with no projection. And then in the recording, there's nothing on the screen. And then I can restart with producing new layers. The first layer is the part with the opera stuff, where the man is kneeling down and the woman is raising her knife, and it's all stuff from opera scenes, from famous opera scenes. And then you have a part where everybody is on stage and the musician enter the stage. And in the end, all in all, you have almost 100 people on stage, together with the video, of course, and so on. The music of the piece derives from songs that have the word reality in their title. Actually, there's a website where you can search for titles with keywords. If you fill in reality, you get a list with all songs called reality, with all songs containing the word reality in the title. And if you want, of all songs that contain the word reality in the text. This is a very long list. It's tens of thousands of pieces. So I had a huge collection of pieces from all genres that have something with reality in the title. The main song is the song called Reality by Richard Sanderson. Maybe you recognized it because it's just in the piece, the entire song, but with a different text. The idea for the text is taken from a concept from YouTube that is called literal videos. Maybe you know about it. It was a hot thing, let's say 10 years ago. And I always wanted to use it. And then I thought, oh, it's so difficult to work with singers. What can I do with singers? What should they sing and how should they sing? It's so difficult in contemporary music. I don't like contemporary music melodies. I don't like decomposed words where you have only the T and the O and you have this zip stuff. So I decided to take this concept, which means the singers sing what they do. In the YouTube videos, there were some guys who made a totally new soundtrack for the videos. That means they did the singing again and the band music again, but they changed the text from the text of the song to the text of what they do. For example, there's a video with the Bee Gees standing in front of a house, and then they go down the stairs while singing, and they don't sing the text of the song anymore, but they sing, we go down the stairs. And there are so funny videos with rappers always rapping what they do. And then you notice what strange things do musicians in music clips. Really strange stuff, but normally you don't notice. And again, this is a sign for what I said before. If you want to point on something, if you want to show something, if you want to lead the attention of the audience to something that happens on stage, maybe you have to emphasize it or to exaggerate. And that's what I tried to do here. So the singers basically just sing what they do. I enter the stage, I go out, I go in, I kneel down, all that stuff. There's two exceptions. They also count, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they have the text of the reality song by Richard Sanderson, but in other parts of the piece that don't contain the music of the Sanderson song. As I described in general for my work, this piece starts very simple with the exposition of what I use, and you can immediately see what's going on. It's just recording, playing back, recording, playing back, feedback. That's easy to understand for everybody. I have music that many people know, so they can just feel comfortable in the beginning, and then it becomes very, very, very complicated because you have many layers. You try to remember what was going on, but you can't. And when you just found something, there's a new layer, and then suddenly the video is backwards or mirrored. Or you don't have the last one, but the before last one, and I exchange layers. And so it can become very, very complicated in the course of the piece. Mainly, besides the music, it's about walking, it's about dancing to music, it's about counting to music, as I described, about singing, and about the relation of singing and moving on stage. The singers of the Neue Vokalsolisten are not the very youngest singers. They are at my age, I would say, and they have this normal opera singing education. And I don't know what they do in their education, but they learn a special way to move on stage. I think even younger singers still learn that. And it results in these strange scenes in operas where they just walk around in a very funny way. I really enjoy that, and I try to use that kind of moving in the piece. There is a citation of Zizek. I saw Tomislav laughing at that point. Maybe you recognize the blue pill and the red pill. There's the baritone coming in, he switches on the radio, and then Zizek starts speaking. It's the Slovenian philosopher I talked about before, and he says something about the blue pill and the red pill in the film Matrix, which is also very much about the acceptance of reality, or about the question, is this way true, or is this way true, or are they both true, or are there even more ways? We don't know. So actually, the piece Transit is, from my view, a kind of musical research about what reality means in our world and in the world of music. Okay, that's it. What you cannot see in the video is that the singers standing at the side, they're singing for the other people on stage. So, for example, maybe you know Luisa Spigoli, she was the pianist of the ensemble, and she's in the last part on stage. And she opens her mouth with "I sing," but she's not singing. It's one of the female singers singing for her. And so on and so on. That's something you unfortunately can see in that video. So I am at the end with my lecture. I'm very much in time. So if there are any questions, feel free to start a wild discussion. Tomislav?
Well, I wanted to ask you first, I really like the lecture. Thank you for it. And I really like transit. And watching transit, I don't know, I wanted to ask you, do you maybe know movies of Zbigniew Rybczynski?
Who?
The Polish Zbigniew Rybczynski.
The tango video. Of course, I know, of course. I love it.
And a new book also. I love his videos. So it kind of reminded me this looping at the same time. It kind of reminded me of that also in a way. So.
Of course, many people sent me this video after watching my pieces. I know it for a long time, and it's really so great. I don't know how many times I watched it. Maybe can you write the name of the? Do you know the name?
I'll write it.
Each time I look for it, I don't remember that complicated Polish name.
Yes, no problem.
Oh, there are still pretty much people in the list. Wow. Other questions, maybe? Or Tomislav, do you want to add something?
Please, maybe somebody else. I'll get back to the questions after.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you? First of all, yes, thanks for the lecture. I really enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you.
Also, I remember this was the first time I've been able to see some pieces of transit because I wasn't at the premiere a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And I mean, I remember I liked the piece, but I didn't remember quite the piece itself. So it was nice seeing it again.
Okay.
And I wanted to ask you just as one thing at the beginning of the lecture, you spoke about when you told us about your kind of manifesto, there was one point that really sort of interested me because I sort of understand what you mean, but I wanted to see how you approached the making the form traceable, especially when working with more modern forms. I don't know if you could maybe talk a bit about that.
Of course. Firstly, you mentioned the word manifesto. That's funny because when I started the talk, I thought after 10 minutes, I thought, oh shit, it sounds like a manifesto. This was not the plan. Maybe I'm always more serious than I look like. So sorry for being so manifesto-ish. Making form visible. Can you maybe detail your question a bit, because I thought I had explained it.
Sure. No, I mean, I understood the part about making form visible and the fact that...
Oh, you got stuck?
The page, but in one slide, there was this phrase that says, it didn't say visible, it said...
I think your connection is
the
not
connection
good.
is bad.
We are missing half of the...
Maybe switch off the video and try it again.
Okay, I'm sorry. So yeah, this is, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay, so no, it was more, it said, I think, make form traceable. And in the way I understood it, it is, I guess, as I understood it, sort of making the references, I don't know if explicit or at least traceable, as it said, but you said that there were some different strategies to do it with more modern musical elements. I was just about to say material, and I just wanted to ask you about which strategies could those be?
Okay, well, firstly, the form is part of the concept. If the concept is clear, you have maybe you can you have an imagination of the piece could be, but that's an idea, and an idea is not in time. Then when the piece starts, it starts running in time, and then as a composer you have the possibility to put kind of interpunctions to say this is the beginning of the second part, this is the end of the second part, and there's the third part, and the third part relates to the second part in that way. That's totally normal stuff in classical music from before the 20th century, but it got lost in the last century. Some people enjoy very much that the music is so free and there's no way to find, so there's no possibility to find a quick way to get through a piece. But I personally prefer if there is a possibility, but it shouldn't be too obvious in the course of the piece. It can be very obvious in the beginning, just to invite people, maybe to invite them in your weird house. And when they are inside, you close the door and then you can make your show. Does that help you?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. If any, I can see all faces, so if anybody wants to say something, just start speaking.
Hi, I have one question too.
Yeah, hi.
Hello. First, thank you also for a great lecture. Well, you were talking a lot about this modern, postmodern concept, and I think this, what you do is really very interesting, open, and these brave ideas without playing, and I really like it very much.
Thank you very much.
But I have this, I think we are kind of stuck with this disposition of audience, what is actually from 19th century.
Yes.
So my question is, did you try to make some solutions in this? I mean, it's kind of, we adopt all the time as a contemporary composer to this expected classical disposition of audience who is just sitting like this, listening to us. And I think it's kind of funny, although I saw a lot of examples of these musicians going into the audience. Mm-hmm. It's, I'm not sure, what is your opinion of solution?
Well, during the last, let's say 20 years, there was a big effort with what we call outreach. So it was to help contemporary music to get more audience, or to make people interested in going to contemporary music concerts. And one part of that was just going to special houses, making music in other surroundings and all that. But it had been forgotten. Everything was changed around the stage, but the stage and what the composers did just remained the same. So my question was always, why don't they just call the composers and say to the composers, please do something outreachy so that more people come to the concert hall, but they didn't dare. And of course, the reaction of many composers would be kind of hostile, maybe. But I think we tried so many things around the stage to change everything. Now we have to change the music. Again, manifesto-ish. Sorry for that. Is it answering your question? No.
Yeah, in a way, but did you ever try something like this with audience? So I don't know, the stage is in the middle of audience, or what is your opinion, that audience is circling, or it's just an exhibition place?
I like all of that, but if the piece that is performed is still structural and hostile, it doesn't help. But besides, of course, we have to find new ways, especially new digital ways that are other videos than just filming the performance. We're thinking a lot about that at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for asking. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to know, you said in the conference that we know who is going to a contemporary music concert, and hence we have to, like, we can have a direction in how we create music because we know who's going to be there. But I was wondering, like, what your solution or opinion would be on people that don't come to contemporary music concerts, and how to bring them to go to these concerts.
Yeah. Well, that's just the thing. I give them things they know. And so they don't have to be so much afraid from contemporary art as they are normally when they don't understand nothing and they go out with a bad feeling. So I just, as I said, I open my door and I invite them with not making them afraid. And I hope that then they get interested and they stay a little bit longer than they would. That's my way.
Thank you.
Is it an answer?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it really does answer.
If all composers would do that, we would have bigger audiences, much bigger audiences. Look at the field of contemporary art. They are, as always, 20 years ahead. It's so different what you can see in the theater or in the museum. And then look at the contemporary music concert, what's going on. It's like 20 years ago. It's a pity.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Okay.
So it's no, if it's no more questions, because I know that Michael have another meeting and it's like to change the time a little before. So if it's okay, I can finish now, or the last very short question, but if not, we finish.
Yeah, maybe you let me say something, just one phrase.
Yeah.
I invite you all to go to my website because, as I said, you can see all the pieces there, all the videos, and you can download all the scores. And there's my email address. So if you have further questions, don't hesitate to write me. I'm very much interested in all opinions. And of course, we can also talk in another context. So thank you very much for joining this long lecture.
Thank
I'm
you.
very happy that so many people stayed.
Thank you very much, Michael. So we see next time, hopefully, in Festival Mixtur next year.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thank you so much for inviting me to this online thing.